Founded in 1893, Sears Roebuck Company was next to Singer, one of the most important suppliers of sewing machines in North America from the 1890s through the 1950s. In 1886, Richard Sears bought a supply of watches that a jewelry company had mistakenly shipped to a Minnesota jeweler. Seeing a chance to make a profit, Sears purchased the watches and sold them to his co-workers. Seeing a great opportunity, Sears began the R.W. Sears Watch Company in Minnesota. With a business growing briskly, he hired Alvah C. Roebuck, an Indiana watch repairman. Having concentrated on watches and jewelry up until around 1894, the company then expanded its product lines with sales of other items such as clothing, firearms, carriages, musical instruments, clocks, and eventually sewing machines. The machine that we're looking at on camera right now belongs to my friend, a local lady, Joyce, who happens to be about 83 years old and owned this machine from the very beginning, around 1972 when she bought it brand new. She recently found herself in the middle of a project and the machine went silent. Talk about scary. After relying on a machine for decades, to have it suddenly give out was nothing short of a showstopper for this elder statesperson of the Kenmore Sewing Machine Company. Kenmore had always been Joyce's go-to machine, always. And now this project was on hold. Until she heard about this weird guy in Oconto, because she happens to be about 18 miles away in a city called Marinette. And she was told by the people at Joann Fabrics in Marinette, not only is he a funny guy, but he's an incredibly gifted craftsman when it comes to sewing machines. And we refer people to him often. And so she picked up the phone and gave me a call. And we met in the parking lot of Joann Fabrics. And she said, I don't know if it can be saved or not, or if you want to just take it for parts, but I had hoped that I could pass this machine on to my granddaughter. I said, don't lose hope. Miracles happen at the workshop every single day. Guess what? Another miracle. This machine, which happens to be a model 1318, I don't think I've ever shown it on this channel before. Sews better than when it was brand new, and Joyce bought it brand new back in 1972. So let's get some lights on, and without a lot more blah blah blahing, let's do some sewing on this classic model 1318 and see if we can't see another machine that was in the ashes come out and present itself as a beautiful phoenix on this channel again. Yeah, let's get some lights on. And I do not have my DeWalt jacket on today. Don't have it on. Instead, I was chatting with my good friend Bill O from Kissimmee, Florida, and I said, Bill, I'm wearing a special shirt in your honor today. So I'm going to show it to you real quick before we jump into this officially. I guess that's as far as I can come out. So hopefully you can see it in the shot. I've got on my train shirt today. And those of you that don't know it, let me bring this up a little bit, otherwise I'm going to be stretching my back unnecessarily. So those of you that don't know it, Bill O, who serves as a moderator on my Facebook page, is a gifted restorer in many respects. He restores vintage sewing machines, like me. He restores musical instruments, like me. And he restored a full-scale locomotive similar to this one back in the day. Not like me. I've never restored a train. Never did it. I don't know that, unless Bill and I did it together, I don't know that I could pull that one off, but he did. So I'm wearing this in Bill O's honor today as we jump into this classic Kenmore, this model 1318, never seen on this channel before. I'm still too doggone tall. The other thing I'll mention is I hope you had a chance to catch the interview that I did with Alex from the UK, Alex Ascroft. If you didn't, you got to check it out because it's fabulous. And also I set up a trailer based on some video that he shared with me of us getting a brief little mini tour of his workshop, which he calls a purpose-built shed, but I think it's cool. I think it's super cool, and you'll want to check that out as well. So, all right, let's get into this, right? So a brief little walk around this machine, and I'll just kind of do it standing up before I sit down to it to do some stitch offs with it. This again is a machine from the 1970s, around 1972-73 is when they made this particular model, this 1318 model. And it was designed as a machine that would have portability. Obviously, it's in a base, and it's generally fairly user-friendly. I mean, you've got stitch length up here, you've got stitch width here, you've got your button to turn the light on and off, feed dog drop. Actually, I'll correct myself. This is not for the light. This is actually reversed down here on the bed. This is reversed. This is our light over here. So our light, reverse, feed dog drop, stitch width, stitch length, and then on top there's some preset. There's actually 4 of them where you can set it to do kind of a stretch stitch, a blind hem stitch, and then you can set it on a default so you can do straight and zigzag stitching. It's got some other specialty stitching engineered into it as well, but we're not going to be exploring those a lot during this premiere today. We'll be kind of keeping it on a basic level. And if you look down on the bed area, I'm going to be using a Schmetz Universal size 90-14 needle today. I'll kind of zoom in on that a little bit. There we go. That's probably close enough. So a size 90-14 universal needle today, and also using a dual duty, which is kind of fun to say, all-purpose thread by Coates & Clark. And I just picked up these mini spools recently. I think they only have about 125 yards of thread on them. So we're probably going to almost run this thing out with our sewing Olympics as we do. But that's all fine and good. And then also this Kenmore takes what, for all practical purposes, is a class 15 style bobbin. And so not difficult to find these bobbins. They sell them at major retailers like Joann Fabrics, and they're aftermarkets. So they're not originals like these, but they generally work pretty well. And if we go over to the needle area, finally, and if you do Facebook, you've already seen some of these shots posted with my soldier friends that Paula Noel just sent me from the great state of Florida. All right, I'm going to finally stop moving the camera now. And what you'll notice straight away is it's not just a zigzag machine like a lot of the older style Kenmores. This does a beautiful overlay 3-point stitch. It does a beautiful stretch stitch. This is kind of a blind hem right here, but I've got it narrow enough. It almost takes on the look of an overlock, doesn't it? And then I've got different style zigzags and straight stitching as well. And the stitch range on this is quite good. If you look at the stitch length control, it's going to only go down to, let's see, 6, but I think it actually is stitching a little bit larger than that. And then the stitch range on the high end, as far as the satin range type stitching, is going to get us right around 20 to 25. So not quite as large, or small rather. I was going to say large of a scale of stitch length. It's not going to get us down quite as small as some of the Singers into that 30 range. But still, it's going to give us a great deal of options, a great many options when it comes to the machine itself. So, and beautiful stitching too, I think you'd agree. And the lock stitch looks just as spectacular. Yeah, I can flip that over real quick and show you. Once I pull the needle out of the material. There we go. So this is our lock stitch. You can kind of see it there in the shot now. And part of the complaint or concern, along with hook timing, that my friend Joyce brought to me with this machine, as she was desperately trying to finish up this project, was also an upper tension issue. And what I'll tell you is, and I actually did a separate premiere on this to highlight the fact, is this is another upper tension from a similar Kenmore. I'll set it over here so it's not blocking the stitching. These Kenmore upper tensions, I'll come out of this shot a bit. These Kenmore upper tensions are an absolute, I was chatting with Bill this morning through Facebook, and I said, Bill, these Kenmore upper tensions are more complicated than the schematics for the Space Shuttle. And with Bill being so close, his home, he can actually watch the launches down there at Cape Canaveral or whatever that place is down in Florida, where they do all the launching of the space rigs going, into outer space, etc. He can actually see those from his front porch. And so he understood right away when I used that analogy of the Space Shuttle schematic versus the Kenmore upper tension unit. He was like, yeah, wow, I didn't realize. Because Bill's pretty much a Singer guy, although he certainly has knowledge in all those other areas as well, as he helps me with answering questions from around the world with people asking questions about machines of every make and model. But Kenmore just, I don't know what they were thinking or what their deal was, but they just made these so doggone complicated. And we'll see that in some of the still shots I'll share through Facebook, but also you can watch it in that semi-mini clip. It's not really a mini clip because it runs about an hour, as I'm taking you through the cleaning process of the upper tension units for Kenmores, and showing you the reassembly of them. And we actually do that for this unit that's on the machine right here. But they are a booger. Oh my goodness, they're a booger when it comes to tearing them down, getting them cleaned, and then remembering the specific sequence and the assembly order, not odor. They stink when they come to an upper tension, but that's not the odor issue. The order that you have to reassemble them in very specifically, and the alignment of the tiny little parts and everything, it's a challenge. It truly is. But that challenge is behind us now because we've got it reassembled. It's working beautifully on Joyce's model 1318. And we're going to be able to put that to the test beyond these off-camera stitch-offs that I've already done with Joyce's machine. So all of that blah, blah, blahing, I should ring the bell so that my veterans can hold latecomers accountable from this point forward, and we can check out this fabulous machine from the 1970s. And I know that many of you that follow me closely may even call me out on the carpet a little bit and say, well, really, a machine from 1972, is that really vintage? Is that really, really vintage? I mean, truly? I don't know. Vintage is taking on new forms, you know what I mean? The only thing that's not open to debate is when I see all of these people on YouTube and Facebook and other places, and some of these people are very experienced VSM people, referring to machines that are less than 100 years old as antique. That's that gets under my skin a little bit, just so you know. And if you see people doing that, set them straight. Again, for a machine to be an antique, it needs to be 100 years old or older. So as to whether or not Joyce's 1972-73 Sears Kenmore model 1318 is vintage, you can type that in the chat what your opinion is on that. And we'll move forward as you're debating that or sharing your insights and your revelations on that particular topic. So, let me move all this other stuff to the side. And I've got some sew-off material that I actually prepared for another machine. And we're going to be doing some of that on Joyce's machine. And I'm looking to see if I have anything that I can demonstrate some of the stitches on. I've got some canvas. What I'm going to do real quick is put on some more music. And this is going to be a little bit more peppy. The first one we heard is called Early Avril. The next one is called Kumbaya City. Kumbaya City. And as the name might imply, it's going to have probably kind of a rhythmic, let's chill, let's be cool rhythm to it. Yes, it will. And being as rhythmic as it is, we got to tone it down just a little bit. Yeah, that's better. So let me grab my scissors and I'm going to cut real quick a piece of sew-off material that I didn't cut yet. I don't think I cut a couple of different things. Alright, so enjoy the music for just a second as I cut some of this stuff. So what I just cut real quick is I cut some genuine elk hide, and then I grabbed my 100% cotton. Actually, I do have cotton cut already. Okay, I don't need to do that. All right, let's have some fun. So off camera, what I'm doing real quick is I'm adjusting my stitch width down to 0, and I'm setting my stitch length at the longest that this machine will do. Let's buzz down this elk hide to start out with this Kenmore from the 1970s. Oh, and I've got to change my stitch on top, my stitch selector, so that we're doing a straight stitch. I almost forgot to do that. We would have had something weird going on. Yeah. So that was Cumbia, and I'm glad the song ended because we'll just leave it off for a bit, and we'll jump into a sew-off with this Kenmore model 1318. The motor on these Kenmores is sometimes a little bit hard to determine as far as the amperage, but it's going to be right around between a 0.8 to a 1.0 amp motor. So it's going to have plenty of reserve power for this premiere today. All right, so let me get my take-up arm to the highest position. There we go. And if you're brand new to VSM or you're brand new to this channel, the take-up arm is going to be that arm on the front of the machine adjacent to the faceplate area that's going to be going up and down while you're sewing. And you want to always move it to the highest position so it's almost on the process of coming down onto its downstroke with the needle bar, because you're going to reduce or eliminate any binding issues that typically occur if that take-up arm is at a lower position. And it's strictly the mechanics of the machine. So we're freeing it up from that leg that it's going to have otherwise, and that can also cause bird nesting sometimes. So we're setting it up for success is what we're doing. All right, so here we go. A single layer of genuine elk hide with a standard straight stitch. At least that's what it should be. Yeah, here we go. Whoa, slow down, buddy, slow down. That is one excited Kenmore. Yes, it is. Very excited Kenmore to say, hey, Scott took me out of the grave and I'm ready to do some dancing. Yes, I am. Almost inspires me to want to put on dance music now. Yeah, just kind of checking my lock stitch on this, because Kenmores are a little bit more needy when it comes to tension adjustments when you change through a diverse field of sew-offs. But actually Joyce's machine did an excellent job on this. We'll take a look at this while I pick out some more music. So yeah, Kenmore's, unlike some machines where you can sew without making as many adjustments, we may have to tweak this a little bit as we go through. Chocolate Cookie Jam. What a clever title. Here we go. Not only a clever title, but extremely excited about their jam. They're still really, really excited. Okay, there we go. They're calming down a little bit. See, they talk about that sugar high. Jam can do it too. All right. So let's zoom in a little bit more on this and take a look at these stitches, shall we? I've got to change the angle on that just slightly. There we go. This is fun, isn't it, this song? So again, if you're brand new to the channel, etc., and by the way, if you're brand new to the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, would you click subscribe, please? 80% of the people that come to this channel every month and watch thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours of videos, 80% of them that attend regularly don't subscribe. I didn't know what it is. So click subscribe. Take care of that now. And let's look at these stitches that this Kenmore just laid down, which I can tell you my initial impression. And again, look at that upper edge of the leather, about 4 to 5 ounces of genuine elk hide. Page 34. And if you don't know what page 34 is, one of my veterans will type in the chat what that means. Okay? Brilliant stitching. Absolutely brilliant stitching. Wow. Wow! They're saying the same thing, wow, Totality of the stitching. A solid page 34 on this first stitch off for this Kenmore model 1318 from the 1970s. Let's flip it over and look at that lock stitch. And before I do that, I'll kind of lean it towards the camera. Look at that thickness again. It just gives you an idea. You know, recently had the chance, as you know, to interview Alex from the UK. And he said, you know, some of these folks will stitch off leathers and it's just really cheapy-deepy type leather. And really, what's the point? That's why I know that when I choose leathers, it's very, very intentional, so that we're going to be putting that machine to the test in a genuine way. It's not window dressing. And this elk hide is definitely in that class. Pause right there. A little bit hard to see with that nap, but as those stitches pop out and say hello, they're absolutely spot on stitching. So I'm going to give this first sew off, as we look at the totality of stitching as well, a definite pass and throw it to the back to begin our sewing sew off pile, which hopefully will become a mountain eventually. And actually thought about doing it. I don't know if I'll do it or not, because I'm not using a leather needle, but I could give it a go. I don't think it'll be too much for this Kenmore. I'm going to add a second layer of genuine elk hide. Flip my screen around. Yeah, you can see it in the shot. We'll get closer. So now we've taken it from 4 or 5 ounces of elk hide up to about 8 to 10 ounces of elk hide. And for those of you that like measurements, that's about 4 millimeters thickness. 4 or 5 millimeters thickness. So we're going to give this a go now, just so that this Kenmore has an opportunity to demonstrate its strength as well with what is a very challenging sew-off, truthfully. And I'm going to just gently tweak up our lock stitch just slightly, which means I'm bumping that upper tension up a little bit, that upper tension that I ended up having to tear down and reassemble. Again, quite a bear on these Kenmore upper tension units. So much more complicated than the Singer equivalent. So that was chocolate cookie jam. Maybe I've had too much jam. And now large smile mood. Large smile mood. I like this song, don't you? It has kind of an epic building feeling to it, doesn't it? All right, which is perfect for sewing 2 layers of genuine elk hide. All right. Adjust this camera shot just a little bit. We'll get just a little bit closer. You see our first stitch off there on the right. Absolutely spot on. All right, let's give these 2 layers a try. Again, I'm not using a leather needle. I'm using a 90 universal, so this may be a little bit too much, especially considering I'm using a dual duty type thread. I'm not using an upholstery thread, so we'll give it a try. If it's too much, it's too much. But I think this Kenmore, with just the right touch, should be able to get this done. Let's try this. Here we go. Whoa, slow down, buddy, slow down. Like I said, this is a very happy machine now. Very, very happy. Wow. Wow! absolutely phenomenal. And the only thing that I would notice straight away, that top row is the one we just did, is those stitches are maybe just modestly compressed, which means when I bumped up that upper tension a little bit to compensate for these 2 layers of genuine elk hide, and recognizing that the hardest stitch to do on a machine is going to be that lock stitch, because it has to pull that thread all the way back up through those 2 layers of elk hide. I may have bumped it up just a hair too high. And what happens is then that upper tension will be really super defining that lock stitch, but it will be overpowering that bobbin case that's trying to pull down to define that top stitch. So that's the balance factor that you have to try to achieve when you're looking at fine-tuning a machine to sew at this level, and you're trying to get that perfect stitch balance, that sweet spot. So we'll look at these stitches and see what you think. See what you think. I still think we nailed it, but I'm just being hypercritical when I'm looking at the stitching as a whole. So let me flip it like this. I'm going to flip it around upside down, right side up. So what we're looking at now is that top row is going to be the first stitch row we did for the top stitch. The bottom row is going to be the second one that we just did through 2 layers of this elk hide. Yeah, that was a fun tune. Large Smile Mood. This one is going to be called Shruddy Pie. Shruddy Pie. I have no idea what that means. It almost sounds like it's English. I'll have to ask Alex if he's ever had Shuddy Pie. I don't know what that is, even what that is, but at any rate. So let's look at these stitches now, after all that blah blah blah. So top row again is our first stitch off through a single layer. Bottom row we're looking at is our second stitch off through 2 layers. Here we go. Now let me point out something to you right here as we launch into these and look at these. Notice the stitch alignment on that top row, where the stitches don't appear to be pitched in any way. They appear to be, for all practical purposes, just perfectly aligned going across. When you see on that bottom row where there's a slight pitch up on the right side of the stitch, that is an indication that that bobbin case was being muscled by that upper tension, and it wasn't able to pull down quite as hard as it wanted to do. We still have very good looking stitches, but when you compare the top row to the bottom row, you can see a slight stitch variation where that bobbin case was being overpowered by the upper tension unit pulling that lock stitch to defined. Remember, it's a tug of war. It's a tug of war. Also, just a slight compression on that top stitch as well, as that bobbin case is fighting against that muscle of the upper tension. Remember, again, I bumped up the upper tension just slightly in anticipation of needing to define that lock stitch through all of this leather. We still have a very good looking top stitch, but when you scrutinize it closely and you understand the concept of the tug of war, you immediately recognize a real modest compression on that lower row of stitching, and also you notice at certain points a slight pitch up on the stitch on the right side of the stitch alignment. And that again is an indication that that bobbin case didn't have enough muscle to pull down. And if you're brand new to VSM, brand new to this channel, the easiest way to understand tension is the bobbin case is going to be pulling down from the bottom to define that top stitch that we're looking at right now. That upper tension unit, this right here, that upper tension unit is going to be pulling up to define that lock stitch on the bottom of the material. So the upper tension pulls up to define the lock stitch. The bobbin case pulls down to define the top stitch that we're looking at right now. Both of these rows are clearly a page 34, because a page 34 does not mean perfect stitch, it means near perfect stitch. And we know exactly what we need to do if we wanted to refine that bottom row of stitching even more through these 2 layers of genuine elk hide. Again, about 8 to 10 ounces of really tough to get through chemically processed leather. All we would need to do is slightly back off that upper tension to give a little bit of the victory back to that bobbin case to snug up this top stitch a little bit more. So a solid page 34, and the beauty of our classroom is we can look at this and we can learn from it, and we can know exactly what we want to do if this happens in our sewing situation, whether we're sewing for a business, whether we're sewing for pleasure, whether we're sewing for whatever reason. We need to know, and we do know exactly what we want to do to make that stitch even more near perfect. Because we're committed to a concept, and my veterans already know where I'm going. We're committed to a concept in this classroom called CANI, C-A-N-I. One of my veterans, or all of my veterans, please type in the chat, what does CANI stand for? C-A-N-I. And it relates to every stitch off that we do, because we always recognize that we can make it better, right? Yes, we do. All right, a little bit more music after our shruddy pie, which again sounds like an English treat, doesn't it? I don't know if it is or not. And now a classic country folk song. And what I typed in the search, I believe was, I typed in the search that I wanted to hear country and folk style music, and now we have a classic tune called Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. I love this tune. Love it. What a great tune. Okay, so we talked enough about the top stitch, which is absolutely bang on as a page 34, and what we would do to make it even more bang on. Now we're going to flip it over and look at that lock stitch, and we're only going to have that single row of stitching on the back of the material because we put these back to back, right? Let's look at that lock stitch, see how we did on that. Through 2 very thick layers of genuine elk hide. A little bit more of a turn on that. There we go. You see how that's kind of tilted down? But look at it again from the side. Look at what we went through with Joyce's Kenmore. It's absolutely amazing. If you've never sewed elk hide, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So here we were kind of buzzing through. We hit that single layer, and then we dug into this 2 layers. Absolutely beautiful stitching. And if we used a leather needle and a slightly heavier thread, we'd be able to get even more definition out of this, but I'll pause right there. Beautiful stitching. Pause. Pause. And pause again. Let's come on and look at the totality of the stitching. You know what? Considering the thickness of this leather, the 2 layers, the type of thread, the fact that we're using a non-leather needle, this is a solid page 34 lock stitch. Again, the lock stitch is always going to be tougher because we're working against pulling that thread back up through these 2 super thick layers of elk hide. We're fighting gravity, we're fighting friction. It's a really tough thing to do, especially when you're using a non-leather needle. And we're using a leather needle that, if you're going to be sewing at this level with 2 layers of elk hide, you really should be right around a size 100 or even a 110 instead of a size 90. So for us to be able to achieve this quality of a lock stitch with the setup that we have, wow. Wow! It just goes to show that if you're a little bit snobby and you say that a machine from the 70s doesn't qualify as vintage, you know what? That argument is open, but the results speak for themselves, don't they? Absolutely. So let's move this to the back as a definite pass, definite page 34 stitching, both with a single layer and then the second layer that we added afterwards, achieving an absolutely gorgeous lock stitch as well. So that's going in the back to start our sew-off pile. So this next one is called Morning Dove. Morning Dove. Do any of you have doves in your area? They usually will sit outside of your window, or they'll sit in proximity to where you can hear them cooing. And most often those doves are going to be in twos. Apparently they mate for life and they stick together, and if you have ever seen one that has lost its mate, they just seem to have a sadness about them, don't they? Yeah, they do. Doves are just a cool bird. They're not like those nasty blue jays that are always being aggressive towards other birds. Have any of you seen that? Those bully blue jays? Yeah. All right. What's our next sew-off going to be? I didn't cut any denim, and I wanted to do denim on camera because denim is what Joyce says that she sews the most. Give me a second, would you? While I'm cutting this, I'll come out on this shot a little bit. It's almost worth playing again, isn't it? Yeah. There we go. Now we got some denim. That worked out nicely. And I think I'll basically duplicate the sew-offs that I did off camera. Excuse me. So let's do a straight stitch down this material first, just like we did off camera. And I've got it set on the longest setting, right around 6 stitches per inch. So we'll see what we think of that. Then I'll lower it down to probably around 10 to 12 stitches per inch. And then we'll jump into some of the other stitch options that this Kenmore Model 1318 will do. And I just remembered I didn't change my shot. Give me a sec. So I should show you while I do it, shouldn't I? So again, on this machine, this top dial is going to be our stitch length. And right now we're on 6. If you want to dial it down and get smaller stitching, you just rotate it clockwise. So you can go from 6 to 8 to 10 to 12, and then, I mean, down into the near satin range if you get almost to that point right there. Our stitch width, when you want to do a straight stitch, you got to do 2 things on this machine. One, you have to set this stitch width down on 0, which is this little red marker, and then there's also a dial on top that has a default straight stitch zigzag stitching selection thing. Get all the way over to there. So you can kind of see it in the shot right there. You see the little blop, 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 almost like little decimal points or something. That's our straight stitch, and then our zigzag next to it. And then there's other, on this specialty stitch selector, you can pick the blind hem, there's a stretch, and just, you know, a couple of other choices on there that we'll probably give a go. So let me go back over to the material, and I won't put any music on for right now so we can listen to Joyce's machine do its magic. Again, a machine that was dead in the water, and now is just sewing up a storm like it's brand new from the 1970s. All right. So again, we'll do a straight stitch, we'll do a small straight stitch, and then we'll goof off and do a couple of other things as well. Okay, I think we're all set. Take up arm is up, and I'm going to try to tame this this Kenmore back a little bit. She has a lot of reserve power, and this is almost kind of a clam style foot controller that I'm using, and I'm not quite as used to using this, so I'm tending to give it a little bit more punch than I probably need to. All right, here we go. Straight stitch going down. What do you think? Oh, she just is beautiful, isn't she? The way she sounds. Just beautiful. And we're going to do all of these, and then we'll kind of look at all of them together. I think. Just checking my stitch definition here. Yeah, denim is a little bit of a trickier one. Again, the Kenmores, because of the complexity of their upper tension unit, they are a little bit more needy when it comes to adjusting that tension. So as we go through a wide field of materials, we're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking, and on some of them we're not going to re-sew them, so we're just going to examine the stitch, make comments about it, observations, and then we'll kind of move on through the sewing process from there. Okay, take up arms at the highest position. Now I'm moving my stitch length control, which is that upper knob, from 6 all the way down to, we'll go down to right around between 10 and 12 on the stitch length. All right, so here we go. This is going to be closer to a satin stitch, but probably not quite. All right, here we go. Oh, is that pretty? Oh, is that pretty? I like that a lot. I like that even better than the 6 stitches per inch stitch that we did. That's lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. All right, let's keep buzzing through this. Get this back underneath the presser foot, and we will set up our next stitch. So what I'm doing off camera now is that little knob on top of the machine. We had it set on that setting with the indication of a straight stitch or a zigzag. We're going to leave it there because what we're going to do now is we're going to do a zigzag. And then we'll jump into some of the other stitch options that the machine can deliver on. So that bottom knob, and I'll show you, because this machine is, we don't see a lot of Kenmores on this channel, do we? No, we don't. Look at those stitches. Aren't those lovely? That's our, right around 6 stitches per inch on the far left. And then we brought it down to be right around between 10 to 12 stitches per inch. Lovely, lovely stitching. Lovely stitching. Okay, so again, we're leaving this where it's at. And the little white dot right there you can see is how we align our stitch selector as we're turning it. And you want to turn this clockwise, okay? Turn it clockwise. Don't be turning it the other direction. This is a mechanical machine. And if you turn it the other way, you could damage some of those gears in the cam settings. So just don't do it. Turn it clockwise, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're going to go over by the balance wheel. No, we're not. So now we're going to take this from where we're at right now, right around 10-12. We're going to turn it back so it's right around, let's go with 8, just for fun. We'll go with 8 instead of 6. And then our stitch width, we're on 0. If we want a zigzag, that's not going to work. So we're going to take this to a point of being right around 4 is going to be our max on this machine. So we're going to go with right around 2.5. How does that sound? 2.5, and then we're on 8 right up here on top with our stitch length. So there you can see we put that right around on 2.5. And again, this is our stitch width. And again, to correct myself from being wrong at the beginning of the premiere, this little button right here is our reverse button. This right here is our light. Okay? And I can see when I get this close to it, super duper close, might have to do a little bit more cleaning. Yeah, this was a really dirty machine, as you'll see in the Facebook shots. And I was focusing on mainly on getting it mechanically ready, although I did go over it aesthetically a little bit as well. So, all right, so now we're going to lay down a zigzag using Joyce's model 1318. I'm almost curious if there was any significant event that happened way back in 1318. If anyone wants to Google it for fun and see if anything significant happened back in the year 1318, I'd be curious to know. Yeah. All right, we've had silence long enough. You know my love of music, right? So now we're going to hear a song, and we've heard this before. We've heard all of these songs before, I think, at one time or another. This next one is called Air Gone, and I'm going to turn the volume way down. Air Gone. Get a drink of water. All right, let's give this stitch a try. See what we think of it. Here we go. Beautiful stitching. Beautiful stitching. You can see those from the side as I'm kind of clipping my threads there. I've got my screen the other way so I can't see if you can see that or not. Well, you can see part of it. I'll kind of raise it up a little bit so you can see it more readily. Beautiful zigzagging. Beautiful zigzagging. And let's just face it, these machines that were made, and I don't think I mentioned this yet. I'm quite sure I didn't. This particular Kenmore from the 70s was made in Japan. Even the manual was printed in Japan. Some of the makers would make the machines over in Japan, and then they would print the manuals back in the US because they knew that some people were still a little bit, they objected to machines being brought in from Japan just because of World War II and blah, 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 and all the other stuff. But this particular situation, they made the manuals and the machines over in the beautiful country of Japan. All right, so let's set this up for our next stitch off, which is going to be one of those sort of specialty stitches that this machine can do. And I'm going to rotate that selector on top, and you should be able to see now we're set for what should be a blind hem stitch, but depending on where we set the stitch length and the stitch width, yeah, it's kind of almost off camera, isn't it? You can just catch the edge of it there. You can see that it's a blind hem that we just switched over to. So, beautiful stitching. Really impressed with this model 1318. And I don't believe that I've shown Kenmores on this channel before, but I don't think I've ever shown this specific model of Kenmore. And Kenmore, you know, on their manuals, they make it simple. They just put model 1318. But when they're actually stamping these machines, they put down a much longer model number. And this model number for this machine is actually, if you wanted to look it up for fun, is 158.13180. 158.13180. You really need to plan to take a deep breath before you give the full model number that Kenmore would have attached to this machine. It's almost like, and you guys know I have a dear friend, I call him Jose, that has the detailing place really, I mean, literally right across the street from the workshop. He's my buddy. And it's almost like that culture. And you see that exhibited in some of the movies, like in Zorro, when they're giving their full Spanish name, and it's like 3,000 miles long. That's the way Kenmore would model their machines with their model numbers, their full model numbers. So, with that said, we'll just call it a model 1318. That's enough. That's enough for me. All right, so I'm going to look at my stitch length and stitch width and decide how I want to set it for this blind hem style stitch. And I'm probably going to leave it, well, I'm going to set it right between 8 and 10, right around 9 on stitch length. And on stitch width, let's see here. On stitch width, I think I'll just bump it a little bit closer to the 2. So stitch length right around 9, stitch width right around a little bit above 2. And we'll see what we think of this particular stitch, okay? All right, and again, no music during this particular stitch off. We'll just listen to this beautiful machine run. All right, here we go. I don't know what you're hearing through whatever you're using to view this live premiere, but this machine, and look at that stitch as well. Absolutely gorgeous stitching. Gorgeous stitching on the part of this Kenmore model 1318. All right, let me clip these threads. And we'll move on to our next one. This machine does have what I would call kind of an overlock, almost like a 3-point zigzag that it does as well. And I did that off camera. I'm going to do it again on camera because I think it's a absolutely drop-dead gorgeous stitch. It truly is. Okay, so I've got my presser foot down. I'm going to click that stitch selector on top to the next stitch, which is actually going to be our stretch stitch. It's going to be kind of a stretch stitch, and I'm going to shorten the stitch length a little bit more on this for this particular stitch. This is the one we're doing next. And all I did was turn this knob. And like I always say in the premieres, whenever you're making adjustments on a machine and you're adjusting any of the knobs or controls on the machine, always make sure that your needle is clear of the material, okay? Because that needle inevitably is going to be pitching and preparing itself for that stitch. And if you got it down in the material, it's potentially going to bend that needle, okay? So don't do it. So we've got that all set up. Now we're going to go down to our stitch selector for stitch length, our stitch knob for stitch length and stitch width. Our stitch selector's up there, just to clarify that. And on this stretch stitch, we're gonna tighten it up a little bit more as far as its width and its length. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna move this from right around 9 all the way up to 10. And our stitch width down here, I'm right around a little bit above 2. I'm going to take it down just a tad further, right around to a solid 2. So we've got our stitch width now here on 2. We've got our stitch length right around on 10. And we're going to do this stretch style stitch next. Just check my camera alignment. And what we're sewing through, I don't know that I specifically mentioned it, we're sewing through 2 layers of denim. And I just literally cut this during the premiere, as you know, because denim is what Joyce sews the most. That's her material that she uses a lot. Camera's kind of wiggly a little bit, isn't it? I hope it doesn't tip over. Okay. All right, and I don't kick it over either. That would be bad. Bad! All right. So let's give this next stitch a go. See what we think of it. Again, it's going to be a stretch style zigzag type stitch. We've got the settings so that we're going to really try to compact it a little bit. And let's see what we think of this. First of all, you need to take my take-up arm all the way to the highest position, though, so we're ready to launch. All right, here we go. Oh, I ended in down needle position. That's okay. Yeah, that's a fun one. It's kind of a snaky pattern almost, isn't it? It's kind of a snaky pattern. And I was delighted when I interviewed Alex recently. I talked about, well, let me say that and reverse that. He talked about the fact that he has certain types of roses that he grows, and he makes up his own names for them. And Yana will kind of tease him about that a little bit and saying, that's not what it's really called. And Alex will dig his heels in a bit and say, well, that's what I'm calling it. It's my rose. I totally agree with him, because that's what I told him on camera. That's what I do with stitches as well, is I'll make up my own names. Lovely stitching, isn't it? We got a couple more to do. Beautiful stitching. All right, there we go. We've got our presser foot in position now. I'll get my take-up arm up to the right position at the highest point right away so I don't forget. And now we're going to be doing that fun overlay type stitch. It's kind of like an overlock stitch. I think one person, maybe it was Emma, called it a comb stitch or something like that during the last premiere. That's kind of what we're going to be sewing now, but you can give it your own name once you see it. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Yeah, call it whatever you want to call it. But we're going to do that stitch next. So my needle is clear of the material. I'm going to go ahead and turn our selector on top of the machine to that stitch. And did you just see that, how the needle moved? Assuming my arm wasn't in the way. That's why we never have the needle down in the material when we're changing settings on the machine. Never do it. Okay, let's see what we think of this one now. So this is a real intense stitch. So I'm going to take my stitch length from 10 back to about 8. And let's see, stitch width. I'll leave stitch width on 2. So stitch length, we're at 8. Stitch width, we're on 2 for this next stitch that we're going to do to music. Let's see here. So the next one is called In the Sweet By and By. In the Sweet By and By. Yeah. I call this stomping music. I don't know about you all, but and instead of saying you all, I could say y'all, right? Yeah. Some people also call this church music, because this is actually a hymn, obviously. All right, let's try this next stitch. Tell me what you think of this one. All right, here we go. Ended in the up position. Yeah, victory. Victory. Yeah, this is not really a comb stitch. This is We'll just call it like an overlock type stitch or something. You can type in the chat what you want to call it. That's what it is right there. You can see that in the shot. And I'm sure it has an official name, but we'll call it whatever we want to call it, right? It's our classroom. Yeah. All right, let's give that a clip. Get that thread back into place so we're ready to do some more sewing with this great model 1318. But I think what we're going to do next is we're going to look at these stitches that we did, because we pretty much covered the scope of what this model 1318 can do. And before I forget, I better turn that stitch selector on top back to a straight stitch zigzag. Then I'll turn my stitch width down to 0, so we're ready to do that. Stitch length all the way to 6, so we're all set for the next sew off, which will be a longer straight stitch. It's pretty much what we're going to do. All right, let me set these up so we can look at them and see what we think of these stitches that this Kenmore 1318 just did. Let me just double check. That should be our, yeah, this is our top stitch. Had to think about that for a second. So this is our top stitch. And then we'll flip it over and look at that lock stitch. Once I get this material to behave. That little side just keeps popping out. There we go. All right, a little bit of music for us to look at this stitch. This one is called the Colonial. Y'all have heard this before. I know you have. The Colonial. All right, let's take a look at these. We'll look at them kind of 2 rows at a time or so. So that top row is obviously with our setting right around 6 stitches per inch. That bottom one, I think we were right around 8 to 10 stitches per inch. Pause right there. Pause right there. Go back the other way again. Folks, I'm going to give that a solid page 34, those straight stitches for sure. Let's take a look at these zigzags now and see what we think. Well, actually, correction, we're going to look at a zigzag. Let's look at that A zigzag first. That is a solid page 34 zigzag, don't you agree? Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Let's look at that blind hem now. And I think when a blind hem is like this, tell me what y'all think, but when a blind hem is like this, I think it's considered a stretch blind hem, which is actually a stitch. And I think that's the difference compared to like a standard blind hem stitch. If y'all have an opinion on that, by all means, type it into the chat. But we'll just call it a blind hem stitch. We could even call it a pyramid stitch because it looks like a series of pyramids, doesn't it? That are kind of separated a little bit. I don't know if you know this, but when I was over in Saudi Arabia, when we were coming back from Saudi after having been there for 6 months, we had to refuel as we were heading back towards Germany, and we actually landed in Egypt. And as we were coming into Egypt to land, we actually flew right over the pyramids. It was kind of cool. It was really kind of cool. So we can call this a stretch blind hem. We can call it a pyramid stitch. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Just type it in the chat if you have some insights or opinions on this. But what we can agree on is that it is absolutely a solid page 34. I might, if I were being super duper nitpicky, I might back off that upper tension just a hair. Although right there it's just absolutely spot on. and I'm looking at those little straight stitches between the two pyramids right there. That right there is a solid page 34, and the balance is just spot on. But a couple of the other places, that straight stitch that kind of joins those pyramids together almost looks a little bit underserved in some of the areas. And that's a product of that bobbin case not pulling down, not being able to pull down hard enough, because that upper tension is pulling up too hard. So that's the only criticism I would make of this. All in all, it's really, really good. But again, we're committed to constant and never-ending improvement. So that's the only thing I would make as an observation. Then we kind of jumped into this stretch stitch, the snaky stitch right there. And there again, I think it's a little bit underserved. When we flip it over and we look at the lock stitch side of this, we're going to see it's a little bit overly poppy. So we have certain glory points right there where it's kind of coming through nice and clear. But again, I'm committed to constant and never-ending improvement. And I would back off that upper tension. If we were sewing a ton of this stretch stitch, this snaky type stitch, I would back off that upper tension a little bit to give that bobbin case more victory over this top stitch. Because right now it's just a tiny little bit underserved. And again, it kind of has glory points and then where it's just a little bit underserved. Yeah, that's my observation. Then finally we're going to drop down to this last one, which initially I thought was kind of a comb stitch, but it really isn't. It's not a comb stitch at all. I would call it kind of a triple point zigzag, I guess would be the most accurate. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Type it in the chat if you have a different name for this stitch. But I think it's a really super cool stitch. We'll go across and look at this one as well. And again, it's a solid page 34. All the stitching so far is solid page 34. But again, I just think that upper tension's being a little bit of a bully right now and taking some away from this top stitch. Again, if you're having a little bit of trouble following the concept, as we're looking at both of these stitches, the stretch style stitch and then also this 3-point zigzag, for lack of a better word or description. What we're looking at right now is the top stitch, which is being defined by that bobbin case down below. And when we give too much power to that upper tension, this thing right here, where is it? When we give too much power to this upper tension, it's going to steal away part of, this is actually a good way to look at it too, it steals away part of the definition of the top stitch because it's overpowering what that bobbin case can do to define this top stitch. It's yanking up, that upper tension is yanking up to define that zigzag lock stitch down below, and it's taking away from what otherwise would be a better defined top stitch. We've got some really good looking top stitches here with all of these stitches. But again, since we're committed to constant and never-ending improvement, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. Yeah. So, totality of the stitching, actually we pretty much had it right there. Totality of the stitching is a solid page 34. Let's flip it around and look at that lock stitch now, finally. And we'll put some more music on too. There, I think that's pretty good alignment. I bent it one way and then it was going the other way. Oh, now it totally went away. Dang, nabbit. Come on there, sew off thing. Alright, I better stop while I'm ahead here. There we go. I'll just leave it alone. I'll leave it alone. So that last one was called the Colonial. And now we're going to hear the Darkest Path. The Darkest Path as we're looking at this lock stitch. The darkest path. So totality of the stitching, you can kind of see what I'm talking about, where some of the stitches are a little bit, I mean, they're all, from the totality of stitching right here, they're all gorgeous, right? Really, really good looking lock stitching, but a little bit overly poppy in some areas. And that again is because that upper tension may have been a little bit high for sewing these 2 layers of heavy grade denim. So let's take a look at these again and just see what we think. Some really good straight stitching there. Let's drop down now, look at that zigzag. Very good looking zigzag. Let's drop down and look at that stretch blind hem stitch, or the pyramid stitch, whatever you want to call it. Let's look at that stretchy stitch, the snake stitch. You can see here what I'm talking about. When we looked at it from the other side, actually both of these, when we looked at it from the other side, the stitches were good. They were very good, and they were page 34 for sure, but they weren't as good as they could be. And because as we look at these stitches here, there's almost a slight compression to them because that upper tension was pulling up too high and stealing away the definition from that top stitch. So let's go across and look at these. Actually, we'll look at the stretch one. And I don't have the best angle, but I think we can see it pretty clearly. And then finally, we've got this this 3-point zigzag. And again, just like all the stitching we've seen so far, this 3-point zigzag is absolutely spot on. That's a real tough stitch to execute, and this Kenmore 1318 did a fabulous job of managing that through these 2 layers of heavy grade denim. So one last time, totality of the stitching. This again is our lock stitch. I think we can declare a solid page 34, and I think we can certainly give it a pass. And just take into account the things that we talked about, the things that I kind of shared out loud, as far as how we could take this stitching to even a higher level and make it even better. Because that really is the drive of this classroom, is that we're never content. We can always make things better. I do that through my restorative process. I constantly am looking at ways to speak more clearly, constantly looking at ways to improve my process, make it even better. And we do the same thing when we're doing these live premieres, these sewing Olympics. We look at it and we go, wow, fabulous, but we could make it better. And that's what causes us and motivates us to get up in the morning, isn't it? That we can make a difference. We can make it better. And that's the goal of this classroom as well. So some excellent stitching on the part of this Kenmore 1318. Very, very pleased with this lock stitch. And also very, very pleased with this top stitch as well. Even though the upper tension unit was being a bully, we still got some very, very solid top stitching as well. So I'm going to throw that to the back. with our elk hide, and we're going to keep on marching forward. Keep on marching forward. We can't march without music, right? I don't think so. This next one is called Future King of Heaven. We've heard this before. Definitely have heard this before. Well, I know in some of my posts on Facebook, Joelle shared that her mom, before she got a FOF, had a Kenmore. How about any of the rest of you watching right now during this live premiere? Did any of you have a Kenmore in the past, or did maybe your mom or dad have a Kenmore? Or do you have a Kenmore now? I'm just curious. Because Kenmore is one of those brands that, like I said in the intro, it was just solid neck and neck with Singer back in the day, but it's kind of fallen off of the radar, hasn't it? Since it went away in the 1950s. And it continued through the 1950s, but it was in Japan. That's kind of what I meant by that statement. Is it kind of left the U.S. market and went to Japan in the 1950s, and it continued obviously long after that for decades, but it kind of fell out of the graces where Kenmore was the machine that practically everybody had in their home, and now you just don't see them as often anymore, do you? You just don't. Well, we've done some heavy and some light sewing. Now let's see. Let's see if we can't go to the ultralight side. Sewing some of this 100% cotton. So we got 2 layers of 100% cotton. I just got to kind of get them to line up to each other a little bit here. Almost. There we go. All right. Now what should we sew on this 100% cotton? What should we sew on this 100% cotton? Needle is free of the material. Kind of debating this. Give me a second here. Yeah, we'll do this one maybe. Yeah, we'll do this one. I won't even tell you what it is until we do it. Okay, and I'll do this without any music on. So we're going down this cotton. Cotton is tricky stuff. When you're just straight stitching it, you're just piecing them together. It's not really bad, but when you start trying to step it up a little bit and go into the decorative space on stuff like this, it can be pretty tricky. So I'm going to do my best to manage it, but we'll see what happens. All right, here we go. I was really trying to keep that tight on there. And the result is absolutely spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. Let's take a look at this. Actually, you know what? I'll do one more stitch down it so that we can, or I could leave it open for Joyce to stitch on it too, couldn't I? Could do that. Let's see here. Kind of debating a little bit. Why don't we put down another stitch next to it? Let's go ahead and do that. What kind of stitch should we do? Let's see here. Let me move my arm so you can see again as we're adjusting that. See that needle moving? That's why you always want to be careful. So, debating. Let's do that snaky one down this material. Let's see, my stitch width is right around 2 right now. Stitch length is right around 12. I'm gonna push it even a little bit beyond 12. And we'll see how this Kenmore 1318 does in managing this super light 100% cotton, these 2 layers as we're piecing it together with this snaky pattern. Here we go. The way this machine runs, I wish you could have heard it when it came into the workshop. But again, when we go over to, we're going to go over to Facebook right after this sew off. And when you see some of the stuff I had to do to this machine, it'll be apparent why it's running so silky smooth now. And why it's laying down such gorgeous stitching on this 100% cotton. Just absolutely spectacular. All right, let's get off our stitch out holder again. We'll look at the top stitch first, and then we'll look at that lock stitch. And we'll have some music to listen to while we're doing it. Next one is called climbing, it looks like. Climbing. They're excited about climbing. You can just hear it right now. Alright, we'll just start with totality of the stitching. This is again is our top stitch. And what we did is we pieced together 2 layers of super thin 100% cotton. And we didn't just do it with a basic straight stitch or a zigzag. We laid down this 3-point zigzag on top and then this stretch stitch down below. Let's zoom in and look closer at them. Some beautiful stitching, but again, I think we got a little bit too much muscle on that upper tension. I did too good of a job in cleaning and rebuilding that tension unit. Some really good stitching though, really good stitching. Totality of the stitching again, I'm going to give it a solid page 34, but recognize that we could have even better definition if we either increase the bobbin pull or decrease the upper tension. And then we would be rocking this to a new level of page 34. Let's turn it over and look at that lock stitch. This is our lock stitch. And again, 2 super thin layers of 100% cotton. Totality of the stitching to start. Beautiful stitching, beautiful stitching. Let's zoom in and take a closer look at these. Pause right there. That is some really, really good looking stitching. Especially on a super thin sew-off like this. But we could do even better. A couple little tweaks and adjustments. Totality of the stitching. It's a solid pass and a solid page 34, but we recognize we could make it even better. So let's move on to the next sew-off, but before we do that, we are going to jump over to Facebook. Because I want you to understand how you can take a machine that is dead in the water to a point where it can sew like you're seeing Joyce's machine do right now. So we're going to take a look at those. I'm also going to change my setting to a little bit longer duration, I think. There we go. This next one is called 9 Lives. Very excited 9 Lives. Okay, so we're going to be looking at progress shots now that I posted previously on Facebook. But if you're not a Facebooker, you didn't see them. So we're going to look at them now. This is when Joyce's machine first arrived to the workshop. And what you're seeing on the left there is an older style buttonholer that came along with the machine. Joyce just wanted to make sure I had everything I might need. But again, y'all know that I'm not much of a buttonhole guy, so that just stayed right in the box. But she might use it. Again, you never know. All right, let's click through these and see what you think. Well, that right away gets your attention a little bit, doesn't it? That gets your attention just a little bit. What we're looking at there is some old gear style grease that is probably original to the machine. Matter of fact, I can say with 100% certainty it's original to the machine. The problem with most grease is that over time it dries out. It becomes very, very rigid. It loses its ability to lubricate and to create cushion for those gears. And the result is those gears are then slamming into each other, metal to metal, instead of smoothly gliding into each other with this oscillating hook system. And if you didn't know it, this Kenmore, Japanese made, has an oscillating hook system. So it's going to be acting like a pendulum, going from side to side instead of going in a full circle like a rotary hook system. But even with the action of this oscillating hook system, these gears are beating the heck out of themselves because there's no cushion right now with this old grease. And you'll see this on other machines as well, where the grease is just, it's way past its expiration date, but because it's on the bottom of the machine in that gearbox, it's out of sight, out of mind, and the average owner is never going to give it a second thought about the need for that to be serviced. And if you go to a local service center, guess what? They are not going to touch that gearbox. They don't have time to do it. To service this gearbox alone is a good 30 to 40 minutes. Maybe even an hour when you talk about repacking it with grease afterwards as well. That's well beyond what the average service center allots for their services. They allow 45 minutes tops. And if they did 45 minutes, they could only do it to this gearbox, nothing else to the machine. So it's not going to happen. More distant shot. Here I'm just kind of tilting the machine back, using a little block of wood to kind of hold it up. And that's part to show you that on the bottom of the machine on the front of this bed below the surface that you would normally see is a nomenclature plate. And we're going to take a closer look at that in a little bit. Here's the bottom of the plastic base of the machine. Just all kinds of junk down there, including broken needle parts as well. Pins, razor blades, and just more junk. There's our nomenclature plate right there. It's going to give us all kinds of neat information like the serial number, the full model number, again, that I joked about, which is 158.13180. It also tells you here, Sears Roebuck Company USA. Well, that's not really true. That's the parent company that was US based, but this machine was manufactured and built in Japan. Some of the metal stuff that I found on the bottom of that plastic bed that I just kind of scooped up with my magnet real quick. Now we're kind of going across the bottom of the machine. It's a well-built machine. And a lot of areas that need to be inspected, serviced, and adjusted. We're going to kind of look at some of those stages of this service as well. Also, I've said this before, the bottom of the machine is typically the most neglected when it comes to proper lubrication. I don't know if people think if they over oil it from up top that it's just going to drip down and do its deed. Maybe to some limited extent, but it's going to miss so many of the crucial pivoting and pitching points on the bottom of that machine. And that motor is going to have to be working that much harder to try to turn that main shaft and that lower shaft because those points are dry or they're just plain filthy. Now I've taken the cover off of that gearbox down on the bottom, and on this model it's below the raceway. Sometimes you're going to find them on the right side of the bottom of the machine, sometimes you're going to find them in the center, and sometimes you're going to find them on the left like this, below the raceway. Wherever they are, they require a very specialized servicing to keep that machine running as well as you've heard this machine running today in this premiere. What in heavens to Betsy's name did I just do? I obviously hit a wrong button. Oh my goodness gravy, what did I do? I don't know what I hit, but I hope I don't hit it again. That was called 9 Lives, stellar win. All I wanted to do was put music on, and I just totally crashed and burned there. So that's the old grease again, way, way, way past its expiration. It's not doing a lick of good for this machine. We're starting to take all that old grease out now. And again, the process to properly service and restore a gearbox like this one is a good solid 45 minutes to an hour. That's how much time a service center or a repair shop in your local area would spend on your entire machine. So it gives you an idea of how deep they really are not going into that machine to optimize it. And some of the other things you can see in the shot here, this is the metal cover. This is the plastic, it's basically a seal that goes on there to keep the grease in the gearbox. And then some of the old grease and the bolts that hold that into place. Starting to get in there and just clean that out. It was just, it was awful. It was just awful. Step by step by step by step. starting to see actually the metal a little bit now. And there was some damage to that metal. There you can just see the busyness of all the stuff that is getting taken out and all the different servicing things that we need to do. I use dental tools, I use Q-tips, I use cotton swabs, as you saw. Just a variety of different instruments to get all that junk out of there. Working in between those gears to get all that junk out of there. We don't want to leave anything behind, because what it's going to do is it's going to contaminate the new grease that we put in. That's the way a gearbox should look when it is about as near clean as you can get it. There you can see I've got my syringe, my dental tool, and we're going to begin the process of trying to fill this gearbox back up with my fresh pink grease. And initially I used the syringe to get into all those different grooves of the teeth of those interlacing gears, so that we can then pack out that gearbox completely with my pink grease. And yes, I get my hands dirty, or at least greasy. And then all those parts that we would put back on, like the seal and everything else, all of those have to be cleaned, because we don't want to go through the effort of cleaning out that gearbox, putting in fresh grease, and then putting anything back on top of that grease that's going to contaminate it. So all that has to be cleaned as well. That's why this process, just for this one little area of the machine, takes about an hour. And there's a seal cover that is clean now, and we can put it up against that grease knowing that we're not going to contaminate it and undo all of our good work. And I've said it before, you don't want to just drop a little bit of grease in there and think that that's going to be enough for those gears. You want to pack that entire chamber with a proper grease. Don't use lithium type grease. Use a Singer approved grease or something like that to restore that grease effect in that space. The gearbox is so essential, and when it's in a condition like it was, it is just holding that machine back unbelievably. Just kind of cleaning up that area along the edges, because you don't want grease to be on those areas, because when you put that seal back on, can't even see that. When you put that seal back on, it might leak if you don't have a good solid seal. And grease is great in the chamber, but you don't want it on the edges where that seal is going to be keeping that grease contained. What a difference, huh? There goes our seal back on. Going to be applying our plate as well. And then sealing that gearbox off, so it's going to be good for another, well, a good long time. I'll just put it that way. That's all the stuff that was in Joyce's machine. And if you have a machine with a gearbox, if it hasn't been properly cleaned and restored, yours probably looks like this or worse. So don't be too quick to judge. It just gets clumpy. It's like somebody that doesn't know how to make oatmeal. And when it's clumpy, it's not going to be protecting those metal gears that are down in that box and all the other moving components. Hitting some of the key lubrication points on the bottom of the machine now, near the hook system. Also doing some inspections as well. Verifying bolts and screws. and also making some adjustments at the same time. More key lubrication. There we're on the right side of the machine near the pitman arm and some of the other moving parts. Verifying electricity and also electrical connections. The good doctor came by to help me out a little bit and using his stethoscope to check the wellness of the machine. And as the restorative process continued to advance with Joyce's machine, let's just say that the doctor was very, very pleased, very, very pleased with the readings he was getting. The EKGs and all that kind of good stuff. And there we had a little bit of an issue with the inside of that oscillating hook. One of the screws had a barb on it. It also was loose. So what I'm doing there is I'm kind of snugging things up, making sure everything is like it's supposed to be. Also, I'm using a special mechanical screwdriver to make some other adjustments and also tighten some of the much smaller screws that are in that hook system as well. There's a real happy oscillating hook system. Very, very happy. But we're not done. We're digging deeper. My approach is surgical, and that means that we don't just give it a once over and consider it good. We dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the result is this. Look at what would have been left behind. All kinds of old filth that would have been inhibiting how well that stitch would be generated in that brain center. Look at all that stuff. All right, let's see if I can put on another song without totally crashing and burning this time here. I don't know if that was Stellar Wind that we just did. I think it was. We'll do URL Melt now. And just kind of showing you the busyness and all the little tools. I think it was Paula Noel that I was talking to recently. She said, I just like to have the right tool. And you got to have the right tools when you're going to this level on a machine to get it right. Part of our hook system, our retainer as well. Cleaning those parts before we put that brain center back together. And the way the oscillating hook system area works is all of that is held together by these two little clamping points on either side. And you don't want them overly tight because it will actually create binding down there. So I'm making some adjustments on those set screws that hold those clamps in place and hold that entire assembly together so that it's just right, not too tight, not too loose. And there's kind of a distance shot of the bottom of that machine. If you remember how we started out, it's been transformed. And not just from a point of how pretty it looks, but how it's going to function. That's the big deal, the function part. Now we're starting to look at the top of the machine, taking the top off and starting to examine all of the stuff in there. There's our bobbin winding assembly from the bottom. This Kenmore doesn't come with a rubber winding type tire. It's almost a rubber plastic. So it tends to be a little bit rigid. And right up here as well, you'll notice where it wasn't properly lubricated, so when someone was winding a bobbin, presumably Joyce, it was rubbing and creating a lot of drag, and it was actually causing that wheel to degrade a little bit. That's all part of that material stuck up there. And it's sticking there because of obviously old varnishing, old oil and all that. This area of the machine alone, just the bobbin winding assembly, has about 12 to 15 service points on it. And most people never do it because they don't know. Here we're kind of looking down adjacent to the balance wheel, looking at all the service areas that need attention. Particularly here, all the old varnishing and buildup right here adjacent to the pitman arm assembly. And I think that's full circle. Yep, it is. So in this next set of photos, what we're going to be looking at is the next stages of the service and restoration on the machine, but also some new friends that arrived at the workshop. And they were sent from my friend Paula Noel. So we have more arrivals at the workshop now and more friends that can kind of step alongside of me and help me with the different things that I have to do in the workshop. Yeah. That's kind of an embarrassing thing when you're Army Ranger Special Forces and you have the doctor's wife pick you up like a little baby. Yeah, that's embarrassing. He's loving it. Their kids are long grown and out of the house, so this is like, we got a new baby! We got a new baby! Oh my gosh, we have too much fun, don't we? It's a playroom. If you're new to this and you're expecting all kinds of serious, yeah, it's not going to happen. We have fun. We have fun, and we learn. And we learn. So what should we sew next with this Kenmore model 1318? What should we sew next? First of all, I'm going to grab myself some bubble gum. I wish I could give you a piece of bubble gum. If you were in the workshop, I'd offer you some. But I love this stuff, and it's such a great thing to pop into your mouth when you're working intently on a project. See that? Oh yeah. Until it loses its flavor, then it's kind of a bummer. But that's why I got more of it. I wonder if my friend Alex over in the UK, when he gave us a little tour of his workshop, I didn't notice any gum or treats or snacks or anything like that. Maybe he's gotten them hidden or something like that. Or maybe Yana says no snacks in the workshop. I don't know. But if I went over to visit him, I would definitely haul over some snacks and leave those with him. Now, if you're wondering how many gumballs I just popped into my mouth, about 6. But they're pretty small. They're pretty small. All right, what should we do next? How about some of this commercial upholstery material? I'm going to fold it in half and get us up to 2 layers. I'm going to fold it into the middle, get us up to 4 layers. I'll fold it one more time, get us all the way up to 6 layers. If you think that's easy, you go ahead and try to find some commercial upholstery material and fold it like this and get up to 6 layers and see what your machine does. It's going to be scary. Making sure I didn't fold it in a way where I've got more than 6 layers. No, that should be 6. And this Kenmore has what I would consider to be some decent presser foot clearance, but we're pretty much running into the feed dogs right now and trying to get that into position. But this does have a hyperextension, a real generous hyperextension. Look at that sucker go. Almost like a rabbit jumping. So I'm going to use that hyperextension to get this into position, then lower it back down. Hyper extensions are such a wonderful thing to have when you get into thicker sew-offs like this. Look at that from the side. I think you can see that in the shot. Actually, it's almost a little bit shadowed, which is interesting because I put an LED light in this machine, but this stuff is so thick it's kind of blocking the light off from hitting that side of the bed. Well, let it suffice to say, 6 layers of commercial upholstery material. That's a new level of crazy. I say it all the time. All right, and we're going to lay down a zigzag on this. Let's see how this model 1318 can handle a sew-off of this difficulty level. Let's see here. I'm going to set my stitch width on 3. I'm going to set my stitch length right around, probably like around 8. So my stitch length is on 8, my stitch width is right around 3. Let's see if we can lay down a zigzag going through this stuff. This is tough stuff. Commercial grade upholstery material is way off the charts, especially when you get to this many layers. All right, here we go. We'll see how this Kenmore model 1318 handles this. It's done a beautiful job up to this point. I'm very, very impressed. All right, here we go. Oh, oh, that's hilarious. I forgot to switch it back, the stitch selector on top. I still had it on stretch stitch, so we just did a stretch stitch through 6 layers of commercial upholstery material. Oh my gosh, I gotta ring the bell. That's insane. That level of needle movement, holy, what? That is wow. That was not intentional, but I'm glad it happened. I am totally glad that just happened. Wait until you see this. Wait until you see this. Wow. Look at what we just sewed through again from the side. That is insane. I've got to do one more stitch. Now I'm almost tempted to go down and do another specialty type stitch through this many layers of commercial upholstery material. That would just be super cool. Super cool, super crazy. So that was URL Melt that we just heard. Now we're going to do 6 seasons. 6 seasons. Six seasons. Well, that just blows me away. Let's do another stitch row next to it. I'm going to use that hyperextension again to get us into position. Wow. I can't believe it. I can't even believe we just did that. But we did. Alright, now let's see if I can actually lay down a zigzag, which is what I planned to do in the first place. So now I changed the stitch selector on top of Joyce's machine from the stretch style snaky stitch to the combo zigzag straight stitch setting. Okay? So now I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to adjust my stitch length to right around 8. I think that's pretty close to where we were at. And then our stitch width, I'm gonna leave our stitch width exactly the same. So we're 8 on stitch length, we're 3 on stitch width, and now we're gonna actually lay down a zigzag, which is what I plan to do in the first place. Take up arm at the highest position. All right, let's give this a go again and see how this model 1318 manages this zigzag, which is a lot easier to do in many respects than what we just got done doing accidentally. All right, here we go. And this needle has gotten a lot of work already. It's gotten a lot of work. And yet it is delivering at an off-the-charts level. You know why? You already know why. Because it's a Schmetz. And it was interesting in that recent interview that I did with Alex over in the UK, one of the questions that came up, I don't remember who asked it or where they were from, but one of the questions that came up was, Scott is basically a huge proponent of Schmetz needles, and I believe him. But what do you think, Alex? Y'all remember what Alex said? We are like he said, we are like-minded. We are absolutely like-minded. He's also a fan of Schmetz. Right, I think that'll work the way we've got it. Although I think we get better lighting if we brought it out here, so let's do that. So we're going to look at that top stitch first. Again, 6 layers of commercial grade upholstery material. The first stitch I did accidentally because I forgot to change that stitch selector on top of Joyce's machine. The first stitch that we ended up doing was a stretch style snaky stitch. And then we laid down a zigzag below that. So let's take a look at those and see what y'all think. I've already gotten a glimpse of them, and I'll tell you one thing, I am like, wow, wow! Kind of come out to here. Look at the totality of the stitching first. We'll kind of come out to there because otherwise we'll be out in the cheap seats. You won't be able to see anything. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. And again, remember, whenever you incorporate needle swing, and we did it with both of these stitches, whenever you incorporate needle swing through a woven style material like this commercial upholstery material, using a universal needle, size 90, which equates to a size 14, using a dual duty, that's kind of hard to say, a dual duty Coats & Clark generic type thread, and you can lay down stitch quality like this through 6 layers of commercial upholstery material. All I'll say is wow. I'll say it now before I start touching the camera and make it wiggle jiggle. So let's take a look at these, see what y'all think. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. You have no idea how difficult that sew-off is through that many layers of commercial upholstery material. That is off the charts as far as a page 34. Off the charts as far as a page 34. Unbelievably beautiful. Let's turn it around, look at that lock stitch. Look at that from the side again as we get ready to flip it over to the lock. Unbelievable. All right, let's take a look at this lock stitch now. Again, the lock stitch is always going to be more difficult for the machine to generate because of the friction and gravity factor. And yet, as we look at this already, I can tell you that we're off the charts as far as page 34. I haven't given a page 34 plus during this entire premiere, but I'll tell you one thing, I'll kind of spin back a little, rewind to the other side and now to this side. And I'm going to say, I think we are pretty much at a page 34 plus level. And we did it through 6 layers of commercial upholstery material. What? Upholsterers would bow at this because they know how tough upholstery material is. And when you get it up to 6 layers, come on, folks, really? Find another channel that's going to sew at this crazy level. Even when you talk about Alex sewing with a 1591 using a Schmetz needle, going through the pie tin or whatever it was, the P tin, or he did something outrageous, and I love it. I love that he did that. But this is equally outrageous when you're talking about 6 layers of commercial upholstery material. Oh man, it gives me a shiver. It does. And these stitches give me a shiver too. Look at those. That's the lock stitch. Page 34 plus. 6 layers of commercial upholstery material, folks. Wow. Wow! Totality of the stitching. This again is our lock stitch through 6 layers of commercial upholstery material. An absolute solid page 34 plus. I am so impressed. And again, there are people out there that are huge cheerleaders when it comes to the Japanese clone machines that came out post-World War II. There are other people that are absolutely sour grapes over the Japanese machines in general. They're going to hate this premiere because of the way that Joyce's machine is sewing, the way it's delivering again and again and again and again and again. And with a sew-off like this, it's a new level of crazy. I'll say it again. It's a new level of crazy when you're going through this many layers. Look at it from the side again, what we just went through. Trying to get the right angle with my screen. Can you see that? And you already saw the stitching that we laid down on it using specialty stitching on one row and a zigzag on another. It's crazy. That's going to go back to our sew-off sandwich. And again, because of the urgency of this service and repair that I did on her machine, we're not going to be dawdling quite as long with this premiere. We're not going to be dawdling quite as long because I've got to get this machine back in her hands so she can get back to what she needs to do. Just checking something real quick, sorry. All right, let's do this. Let's do another sew off, and then we're going to jump over to Facebook and look at that last set of progress photos. I really want you as students and fellow teachers to appreciate how important it is to understand why we take time to go through these progress shots. You can't just look at a machine performing at a page 34 level and let that be the end of the story. You got to understand how you got to that point. That would be like watching the Olympics, but never getting those little cutouts where they show that athlete, man or woman, training intensely over years, sometimes longer than years, sometimes decades, or a decade plus at least, getting ready for those Olympic Games. You can look at all the sweat and the tears and the strain and the effort that they poured into getting ready for those games. And then you see them perform. And sometimes that performance is just a matter of seconds. Sometimes it's a couple minutes. And then done. They either get the gold, they get the silver, they get the bronze or whatever, or they don't stand on that podium. But watching them train for it, get ready for that huge event, gives you such a deeper appreciation for when you actually see that individual or this machine performing at this event, this premiere. That's why I do it. I want you to see that sweat and that effort that went into getting this machine back from a point where it was in the ashes to a point where it is a glorious phoenix. I know you understand. Y'all are so smart. But I really want to emphasize that to our newbies that are part of this premiere from around the world. All right, let's do another sew off and then we'll jump over to Facebook. If I didn't mention it, I can't remember if I mentioned it already. This is called Digital Ghosts. Digital Ghosts. What an interesting title, isn't it? All right, I think what I'll do next is we'll go back to the light side again, and we're going to sew some of this ribbon material. This again is 100% polyester. 100% polyester. It's real super slippery stuff. It's real tricky to sew. So that's why we're doing it. It's just... Like I said, I like to make it real. I like to make it challenging. I don't want this to be window dressing. I want this to be a real sewing Olympics. So I'm going to go on top of the machine as I'm blocking the entire shot. I'll do it with my other arm so I don't do that. Right now we're set on that multi-stitch setting with the straight and the zigzag. I'm going to turn it clockwise to the blind hem. Actually, a blind hem would be kind of fun on this ribbon material, wouldn't it? Let's do that. So we're going to do the blind hem on the ribbon material. I'm going to shorten it up a little bit more. We're on 8 on stitch length right now. I'm going to bump us all the way down to 10. And then on stitch width, I'm going to take us from a 3 down to about 2.5. Right around 2.5. Okay, so let's give this a try. This ribbon material, 100% polyester, more slippery than snot. And we're going to be trying to lay down a, what I would call kind of a stretch blind hem stitch. All right, here we go. Oh, is that gorgeous? Oh my goodness, that is gorgeous. Wow, that is fabulous. I have never seen a stretch blind hem stitch or a pyramid stitch, whatever y'all want to call it. I've never seen one look better than on this 100% polyester. That is just, I'm just going to say it. Get the kids out of the room. That is sexy. That is just downright sexy. Let's give those threads a clip and lay down another difficult stitch next to it. Let's do it. You know what? Let's put down 2 more stitches on this material. Let's lay down a straight stitch down the middle, right next to this stretch blind hem, and then we'll see if we have room to the right of it to lay down some sort of a decorative stitch next to it. That'll be fun. All right, so I'm remembering this time to change my stitch selector on top back to a multi-stitch setting of zigzag and straight stitch. I actually remembered that time. Now we're going to lay down a straight stitch. So I'm taking my stitch length over to 6, my stitch width down to 0, and now we're going to try to lay down a straight stitch down the middle of this 100% polyester. Here we go. Take-up arm's already at the highest position. Nice and slow and easy. We're going to need a little bit of accuracy here. We're going to need to sew pretty straight, which is a miracle unto itself. Here we go. Nice and slow. Nice, slow, and steady. Steady, steady, steady. Oh, wow. Unbelievably beautiful. We're going to have to get real close to these to see them because of the light thread and the pink material color. But we're going to do it because we got to see these up close. These are absolutely spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. That is a break-worthy stitch right there is what that is. All right, and we do have room. I actually did a good job of keeping pretty straight. So I'm going to get that presser foot back into position. And now we're going to choose our next stitch to do on this super tricky 100% polyester. I should actually get that material so it's reasonably straight. There we go. That's looking better. Okay, so I'm changing my stitch selector from the multi-stitch setting we had. And I think we'll do that 3-point zigzag thing. Hold on a second. Just a second here. There we go. I was trying to set the machine to do the 3-point zigzag, but I still had the stitch width on 0, and the machine was going to allow me to do it, but it was clearly groaning like, hey dude, don't put us on a 3-point zigzag when you don't have any stitch width allowed for it. It's not going to work. You're not going to get a good outcome. So loud and clear, loud and clear. Okay, so we're going to lay down this stitch again. We've done this a couple times during the premiere because I think it's fabulous. So we're going to go with a 3 on stitch width, stitch length. We're going to go with right around a 10. So stitch length is 10, stitch width is 3, and we are going to be laying down a stitch that has incredible needle movement, which when you're sewing on something super slippery like this is something most people try to avoid, but we're kind of like the firefighter. We just run right into the fire. All right, here we go. Total silence in the workshop. Listen to this beautiful Model 1318 get the job done. Here we go. Oh, I actually chose a different stitch. One of the specialty stitches. This is going to be like the comb stitch that I just ended up doing. Aha! Cool! See that? When you make mistakes, sometimes you get some great results. Yeah, this is, well, not really. The lighting was hitting it differently. You know, this is the same 3-point zigzag. I thought I got a slightly different result. But what I did on one of the sew-offs off camera is I just made it a lot more narrow. I really took that stitch width down, so, well, that's okay. I set it exactly where I wanted it, but I thought I'd set it somewhere else, so we got exactly what we plan on doing. At any rate, too much coffee, too little coffee. All right, so let's take a look at this ribbon material with these 3 stitch lines that we just laid down. And again, that was Digital Ghosts. Next one is called Wolf Moon. Wolf like the animal. A little bit more water. All right, let me get out my stitch off holder, because I think we'll need it on this stuff. It's so lightweight. Okay, finally I have it set up. All right, let's take a look at this top stitch and see what we think of this. So from this distance, a little bit hard to see because of the coloring of the thread against the material, but you can kind of make it out. We've got some solid page 34 stitching, maybe even page 34 plus. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. Pause right there. Pause. 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 Folks, I am going to declare a page 34 plus. That is a beautiful stretch, blind hem stitch, and a straight stitch that are just saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. Unbelievable. This material is so hard to sew because it is so rice paper thin and slippery. And so after laying down those two stitches, which are not easy, we decided to take it off the charts and do this 3-point zigzag. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, look at that. Holy mastacholi. I know, I said it. Sorry. Folks, absolutely, we're going to come right out about to there. Absolutely page 31 plus, 34 plus. I only had 2 cups of coffee today. I don't know what's going on. But at any rate, a solid page 34 plus. And I'm going to flip it over and we'll look at what is the lock stitch now. Unbelievable, unbelievable stitching by this Japanese Sears Kenmore model 1318. Here goes our lock stitch. Folks, I don't know what to say other than wow. It's absolutely off the charts. It's absolutely off the charts. Let's zoom in and take a closer look at these. This model 1318, holy mackerel. If you're a Japanese machine hater, you are hating this premiere right now. Look at that. Unbelievable. Wow. Absolutely spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. Let's go down to that 3-point zigzag. It just doesn't get any better than this. All right, I'm going to say it again. Cover your kids' ears. Mastacholi! Holy mastacholi! Holy rigatoni! Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Wow. What do you say? I mean, really? It's off the charts. It's not a perfect stitch. I'll say it again. These are not perfect stitches. They are near perfect. Because we could find some way, I don't know how. I think it'd be almost impossible, but we could try to make them even better. Constant and never ending. Type in the last word into the chat. Constant and never ending what? And it doesn't just relate to the way the machines sew on this channel. It relates to every aspect of what we do. It's a life principle. Constant and never-ending what? All right, back to the rear as a definite pass, a definite success, a definite page 34 plus off the charts. Are you kidding me? What kind of Minute Maid are you drinking? All I can do right now is just go, wow, unbelievable. Come out on this shot and show the machine for a little bit, because I'm inspired to, I want to grab a piece of leather. I know we already did elk hide. I know that. But I've got one of these Schmetz universal needles in. They're supposed to be able to handle leather well, and usually they do. But I want to grab a little bit of leather, if I can find it. Perfect. Protected full grain leather. Protected full grain leather. This is what I was looking for right here. All right, let's go back down to the needle. Let's get set up, but we're going to go over and look at the progress shots first. Progress shots first, and then we'll jump into this, what probably is going to be the final sew-off. Probably going to be the final sew-off. And I've already sewed 2 layers of elk hide, but we're going to have trouble. Are we going to have trouble seeing? No, this nap is pretty flat on this protected full grain leather. I was going to say we could go to 2 layers. I'm not concerned about this machine being able to go through 2 layers. That's a no-brainer. I mean, if it can handle 2 layers of elk hide, it's going to be able to handle anything I throw at it. But I'm going to get this into position, so when we return to the machine, after looking at some more Facebook progress shots, this final set, we're going to be able to lay down every stitch this machine can do on this protected full grain leather. Single layer protected full grain leather, but it's about 3 to 4 ounces. Not quite as thick as the elk hide, but it's pretty daggone close. So that was Wolf Moon. Now we're going to do Vital Whales. Vital Whales. Kind of sounds like whales, doesn't it? Maybe that's why they titled it this. All right. Well, I don't know about you all, if you came to this premiere as a skeptic or a believer. I know you believe in what I do, but we can even have believers that are skeptics about certain machines. I don't know if you remember that customer that drove in all the way from Ohio to the workshop. From Ohio to the workshop. You heard me the first 2 times. And she said, Scott, before I started watching your channel, I was a sewing machine snob. I was a sewing machine snob. And I just didn't think certain models were even worthy of video shooting. And she said, as I watched more and more of your machines from every walk of life, arriving at the workshop in every condition imaginable, and you would go through your magic and you would get them back to sewing at the top of their game, and I started watching those machines that originally I thought they were junk. She said, my whole outlook on VSM was changed. I was transformed. I was born again! I mean that with all respect. She was absolutely born again in her outlook on VSM. She was transformed in her thinking. Her mind was renewed. And that's the beauty of this channel, is because I work with so many different types of machines, and they arrive in such amazing conditions of disrepair and destruction and mayhem. And then they're premiered as the evidence of the magic of the workshop. And all of a sudden you're like, how did he do that? I'm not talking. I'm not talking. All right, let's look at these fun pictures. And I say fun because I love to set up some of these pictures with my friends in the workshop, and especially my new arrivals that Paul and Noel dispatched to the workshop, and just show you some fun. Show you can have fun once you find the screen of the laptop. You can. So here's the doctor and the missus. Empty nest syndrome. They all of a sudden see this cute little guy, this Special Forces Ranger guy, and they're like, we should pick him up and embarrass him severely. And that's what they did. Yeah, no apologies. They just did it. They're like grandparents. They can get away with anything. Grandparents have superpowers, and they have absolute impunity when it comes to doing anything they want to do. And no one, including the President of the United States, can say a darn thing about it. Because you know why? They're a grandparent. Yeah, that's all I need to say. And there's the other friend that came with my Army Special Forces Rangers guys, is their really cool dog. And he's kind of checking out the stitches. And I kept watching him close because I thought, he's had a long journey all the way from Florida. And maybe Paula didn't take him out to go to the bathroom before he was sent. So I didn't want him to mark that beautiful off-camera stitch off of the 2 layers of heavy grade denim. He was a good boy. He's housebroken, pretty much. Probably more so than Mr. Bean, I mean, truthfully. All right. Next picture. So here we're looking at the top of the machine near that stitch selector that I forgot to change a couple of times during the premiere. But hey, you know what? Whatever. And we're just looking at some of the varnishing and buildup here and here. And varnishing, you might say, well, isn't that just discoloration? Is that really a big deal? It absolutely is, because varnishing also has a stickiness to it. It has a stickiness to it, and it restricts the movement of parts. It inhibits the flow of the machine, and the result is the machine is not going to perform at the top of its game as long as that sticky, nasty stuff is all over it. And this stuff was everywhere, as you'll see. So here we're kind of moving across the top of the machine. We're also going to look at the cam stack as well. That helps to generate some of the cool stitches that we've done. That's part of our cam stack right there. Does that look like it's optimized? Type in the chat what you think of that. Because let me tell you something. If you took your machine to a local service center, when you got your machine back, if you took the top off, there's 2 bolts that hold the top of this model 1318 on. If you took the top of the machine off and looked at it once you got done paying them the bill for 125 to 150 bucks for a 45-minute service, you know what? If you do the math, I'm not a math guy. You guys know that by now. I'm not a math guy. But if you do the math and you pay someone $150, even $100, and they work for 45 minutes, I mean, we're almost talking getting the compensation of a doctor or a lawyer. You know what I mean? I mean, that's almost $100 an hour. And they haven't done diddly to your machine. Nothing compared to my process. Not even comparable. And this cam stack assembly right here is so essential to being able to deliver those stitches that you saw this model 1318 just lay down with near perfection today. I almost said perfection. Oh, I almost slipped up there. It wouldn't be the first time. It just laid down near perfection with gorgeous stitching. And this component of the machine is so essential to being able to do that, or not being able to do it, one or the other. So we're starting here. This is how it started looking. Look at all this varnishing right here on these components of the machine. Look at all the varnishing there. It's horrible. It's like taking the breath out of the machine. It's like suffocating it. I have no idea who that person is, but we need to get better security in the workshop so that People just can't wander in off the street. I mean, what is that about? No, that's me. That's me with my magnifiers on. And I put them on periodically when I'm doing some real close work because I want to be able to see the things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to see. And I still, even using these, I sometimes will miss something. And the evidence of that is when we do these premieres and I zoom in super close, I mean ultra close on the machine, and then all of a sudden I see a little bit of varnishing I missed, or a little speck of that, or a little spick of that, or whatever it is. So that's why we're committed to the principle of canaille, because even when I aim for perfection, sometimes I'll still miss a little something, just a little bit. Now that's the after. You remember how brown and nasty looking that was? How crudded up it was? Now we're getting that natural look of that cast steel back again to the machine. And there we're starting to work on that spring. That spring is part of the cam system for the machine. Oh darn it. It just shifted back up to the top again. That's okay, we'll fix it. So Vital Whales is what we just heard. Now we're going to hear the Stoic and the Sailor. The Stoic and the Sailor. So it's an important spring. And not to mention you never leave stuff behind because then it migrates in the machine. Does that look better? That's the before. That's the after. There's a saying that I quote periodically, and it was by a man you may recognize his name. It was Aristotle that said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, it's a habit." When I do my process on machines, it doesn't matter whether it's a Kenmore or a Husqvarna or a Pfaff, I'm always aiming for that excellence factor. Always. Always, always, always. And I'm improving it too. I'm starting to get all that junk off of that cam stack. That is nasty, sticky, slimy, disgusting stuff. Combination of dental tools, my wonderful handy dandy notebook. No, my wonderful handy dandy brush that is designed actually for a typewriter. No, Tom, I'm not doing that for you. I'm doing it because it's a great tool. Jeez. We're starting to break it down. Can you see that? We're starting to get down to where we need to be. But then we're not going to stop there. This is a type of gear. So what are we going to put on it? Type in the chat if you know what we're going to put on this once we get it to a state where it's as clean as we can get it reasonably. Type in the chat. What are we going to put on it? Look at that. That is just... holy mackerel. There's a microfiber towel as well. I love to... They create, interestingly, while they are safe for services, if you move them at a quick rate, they really do a great job of wicking off a lot of that extra stuff that some of the tools will leave behind too. And if you typed in the chat, we're going to be putting that pink grease on that cam stack gear assembly. You're absolutely spot on. Give yourself an A in the class and a pat on the back. That's exactly what we're going to do. I started with my syringe, but then I realized that I could reach in there really well with one of my dental tools, so I started taking it directly onto my container and working it into those gears that way too. So I kind of go back and forth. Step after step after step. That's all varnishing right there, folks. That's all varnishing. And where we're looking right now is inside of the faceplate area. You don't want to leave that stuff behind. You don't want to say, oh, it's just patina. No, it's not. It's not patina. We're not talking about a finished vintage product that you're going to be putting out for display like in our new coffee shop in town here. We're talking about a machine that needs to operate and needs to move freely. And that varnishing is like sticky syrup that has dried and is now smothering that machine to death. Do not leave it behind. That's the way it's supposed to look. Look at that. That's the after. We're looking down on top of it. Where's my cursor? There it is. This is the before. Look at that. We're just coming from a different angle on the next shot. That's the before. That's the after. Look at that. It's starting to come to life again. It's starting to be able to breathe. It's taking a big gulp of air right now, folks. It's gulping air. Can you hear it? Can you hear that machine? Can you hear Joyce's machine going? You know, if you've ever swam in a pool and you decided, hey, I'm gonna see how far I can go under the water, how far I can travel underwater, and then all of a sudden you get to a point where your body starts to say enough is enough, and you break the surface of that water and you suck that air in. That's what this machine is doing right now. It's taking a gulp of air saying, I forgot what it was like to hit the wrong button again. Doggone it. I don't know what button I'm hitting, but I should stop hitting it. That's weird. All right. But it's taking that gulp of air in right now saying, wow, what a difference. What a difference. And the two most neglected parts of a sewing machine, any type, make, model, name anything, and it applies, is the bottom of the machine and the faceplate area. And that's why I target a lot of time in these areas to get that machine to the top of its game. And again, because of my microscopic surgical approach, and because I wear those funny little goofy looking magnifiers, I can see things that other people would readily miss, and certainly would even overlook, like at some of those local service centers, because they just don't have time. And I want to be fair to them in saying they've got a lot of overhead. They've got a lot of costs. And so they have to limit their service time to about 45 minutes. Otherwise, they would go out of business. With my lack of overhead, I'm able to devote my time and passion to going way, way off the charts beyond that. And so I'll notice things like this, where barely hanging out is a tiny little fiber. And then all of a sudden I start to get a hold of that fiber and work it off of that joining point inside of the faceplate. And I discover that there's a huge hunk of thread that is causing binding inside of the faceplate area and causing that machine not to flow as it's sewing. And I'm able to get that out of there. You'll see what I mean. You'll see exactly what I mean if you don't do Facebook and you haven't seen this before. Now I finally have it out to a point where I can start to work it out of there with my tweezers and with my fingers as well. Look at how much I've gotten out of there. It was wrapped around those crucial pivot joining points and causing that faceplate area to bind up. The motor's going to push through it, but it doesn't have to. If you're paying attention and you get that out of there, it's going to allow that to flow. We'll just call it sewing machine flow, sewing machine groove, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be running the way it's supposed to be running instead of binding and struggling. That was called the Stoic and the Sailor. I have no idea why they call it that. Yeah, let's see if we can skip ahead a little bit. How about lifelong? Lifelong. Let's do that one next. Yeah, this is groovy. I'm grooving this. So here you can see I'm starting to get that thread out of there. Again, it was barely visible, but because I had my magnifiers on, I could see it. Now, if you can see on the bed of the machine, that's a hunk of thread. And it wasn't 30 weight thread, it was a little bit heavier than 30 weight thread. That probably is a good 10 inches long. It's nearly 10 inches long, and it was jammed in between one of the most crucial pivoting, rotating points inside of the faceplate that joins up with the needle bar. What do you think that was doing to the machine? Yeah, exactly. If you typed in the chat something like choking it, killing it, constricting it, binding it, bondage, whatever you want to say, that's exactly spot on. Exactly spot on. The difference of the workshop, folks, the difference of the workshop. Continuing to target areas of need. And eventually we're going to get to that nightmarish upper tension unit. You'll see what I mean. Joyce is around 83 years old, and I'm not disclosing anything private or confidential. She was very proud of her age, and so I'm raising that as a banner, as a sign of victory in her life, that she is still out doing all kinds of magic things into her 80s. That's how I hope to be eventually when I get to that point in my life. If I get that far, I hope I do. So even at 83, being as vital and as independent as she is, a little bit of extra light helps. A little bit less heat in the summertime helps. And so we're going to swap out that old incandescent bulb with a LED bulb. Yes, we are. There it is installed, and wait for the, put on your sunglasses, put on your sunglasses. Oh yeah. Yeah. Continuing the process, continuing the process. Oh boy, here's the scary part. We're taking out that upper tension. Now, if we followed what a lot of the Facebook sewing groups say, where all you gotta do is just swab something through those discs. And the scary thing is, some of the groups don't even talk about the need to raise the presser foot lever before you do it. I've seen some demonstrations where they're trying to jam something in between the presser foot discs, or the upper tension discs. They got me totally boggled up here. They're trying to jam something in between the discs of the upper tension assembly without even raising the presser foot lever. What kind of new crazy mindless insanity is that? Seriously, you always raise the presser foot lever when you're trying to do anything in between those discs. Otherwise, you can actually break the assembly. Seriously, folks, come on. If you're going to be part of those Facebook sewing groups that are just totally leading people astray, be in there as a beacon of light, taking your knowledge from these classroom sessions that we have and helping them to understand what the truth is. Please do it. Please join me. Light a candle like Elton John sings about, and step out there and be a light, be a candle in the darkness of some of these groups on Facebook. I mean, really. Not all of them are bad. It's like a broken clock. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. But some of these groups, oh my goodness gravy, they are putting out information and misinformation that is leading our little lambs astray. You gotta scoop those people up and bring them to class. Bring them to class. I'll even bring cookies to class if that's a way to entice them to join us in increasing their knowledge. All right, I'm done with my rant. See what happens when I chew bubblegum during a premiere? It just... Not to mention we're dealing with this upper tension now, which is downright terrifying. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean that well where that upper tension is installed. We got to do that. Madam Walla something beat. Let's drag that puppy up and see if we can hear that one next. Madam Walla beat. Let's hear that one. Yeah, this is a fun one. We've heard this one before. So we're cleaning out the well. We're preparing it so once we're done with the upper tension unit, which is right over here, Once we're done cleaning and reassembling that upper tension unit, which again is an utter nightmare compared to a Singer upper tension unit, or any other maker for that matter. Kenmore was just really feeling wily and crazy the day that they designed that puppy. Yeah, they were. Distance shot. There is the Kenmore upper tension assembly completely and utterly disassembled. Folks, if you compare the number of parts to this unit compared to any other machine maker in the world, anyone, I don't care who it is, you are not going to find a more complex upper tension assembly than the Kenmore design. And that's going from probably early 50s all the way until they closed their doors. They said, we are going to leave our mark on the world. We are going to leave our mark on the world. And it's going to be with people gnashing their teeth and cursing, even after they leave church, about our upper tension assembly. It's going to happen. It is going to happen. Oh, yeah, it is. So look at all those components. All of them have to be cleaned. Some of them need to be stripped. Some of them need to be stripped down to bare metal and then a light film of lubricant on them. And just doing that upper tension assembly is a marathon. It is a marathon. And you'll actually see me in that other premiere that, I don't know if it's already been presented, or eventually it's probably going to be attached to this one as a trailer. And then you'll be able to see me actually doing it on video, cleaning all of these parts, reassembling them, and then you'll have that as an aid if you ever decide to take it on with your Kenmore. I have no idea what that is. Download something. I don't think that was supposed to be in there, but it is now. So now I'm cleaning all of those different components. And you can see they need cleaning big time. I'm really curious about that last picture. I have no idea what that was. Some schematic. And you can see all my friends, the new friends that Paula sent to the workshop, my Army Ranger Special Forces buddies. They are posing with this revitalized, renewed, restored Model 1318. And you'll see them doing all kinds of fun stuff like one-arm push-ups and you name it. They're all stoked about how this machine is performing now. Let's see if I cut that dog off. Yeah, you can still see the puppy. And all these guys have names. They came in a package with names. I don't remember what all their names are, but Paula, after we communicated, and I, because she sent this to the workshop by way of Amazon, and there's no way to tell when you get it who it's from. So she eventually reached out and she kind of dropped a couple of hints that she had done it, and then she said, "Did you notice the name of the dog? Did you notice the name of this dog? According to these makers of these cool action figure thingies." I said I did. The name of the dog is Hans. H-A-N-S. And if my friend from Norway happens to, hold on a second. If my friend from Norway happens to catch this, that is a name of honor in this workshop. So I just found it interesting that they would name a dog Hans. I've never heard a dog named Hans before, but that's Hans. And yes, he's potty trained. He's not going to mark that so off, I promise. A couple of my other buddies on top of there. I did not specifically plan to have that American flag in the background, but there it was. You'll see it again when we go back to that. So that was Madame Wahala something or other. This is called Bella Bella Beast, or Best, or Beat. Bella Bella Beat. Bella Bella Beat, that's what it is. So notice my two Army Ranger Special Forces guys and an American flag stuck in my cup behind them. That was not part of the plan, but it just worked out. Just worked out nicely, didn't it? Another one of our Army Ranger guys up there by the Stitch Selector. And personally, when I think about when I was a little bit younger and I was in uniform, out of any of the Army Ranger dudes, this is probably the guy that looks most like me. I mean, if someone was going to ask that, which one looks most like you, Scott? Which one do you think you look most like? It would be this guy right here. Yeah, you kind of see it on the profile there. Same Roman nose, you know what I'm saying there. Yeah. Yeah, yep, that was me. That was me. A couple years back. Mr. Bean stepping into the mix of things, wanted to check out who these new dudes are. Making sure none of them are dancers and they're going to compete for his limelight. German Shepherds are a neat dog, aren't they? Have any of you ever had a German Shepherd, or do you have a German Shepherd now? And if you don't have a German Shepherd, type in the chat what kind of dog you have. That's one breed of dog that I've always thought about having, but I've never had, is a German Shepherd. Actually, there's a lot of other breeds as well that I've really just kind of fallen in love with. I think they're just amazing. There's a good doctor kind of coming back again, checking on things. Oh, I didn't even notice that. That guy right there, I think his name on the package was Smoke. He's actually changing the knob on the bottom. Do y'all remember what the knob on the bottom controls on Joyce's model 1318? Type in the chat. The cool Army Ranger dude is messing around with that knob on the bottom. What does that control on the machine? Type it in the chat. Oh, that's so embarrassing. That is so utterly, and yet it's cute. It's cute and embarrassing at the same time that the doctor's wife would pick up this Army Ranger and basically treat him like a little baby. I mean, really. Even the dog is like, what in God's green earth is going on? What is going on? Brrr. Okay, let's stick with the cute part. Cutely terrifying. That's what it is. Oh, hey, you guys are the smartest students and fellow teachers in the world. Did you catch what's going on there? Not that Herr Obermeister kind of stepped into the scene. That's obvious. There he is. Who else stepped up into the scene and is getting a little bit closer than she probably should to the dude that is the commander of the group? Aha. Uh-huh. Your Majesty, did you catch that? Of course you did, sir. I know you did. You're having a talk with the young lad now? At sword point? Okay. Well, you're the king. You can, yes, sir. You can. It is cute though. They make a pretty cute couple. Yeah, they do. Okay, well, a ranger is not afraid of a sword, but he probably, with his military bearing, he is showing respect to the king, though. Yeah, he is. Okay, cool. All right, a little romance in the workshop, along with Umi and Dr. Singer. Yeah. And this one is called Find Something or Other. We're just going to go past that one. So there we've got a distance shot. The Sears Kenmore Model 1318, born back in the 1970s, specific window 1972 to 1973, has made it through the intense process of the workshop and is now ready for the premiere that we are now doing. Yeah. The whole gang is out there. How smoke got up on that knob on top. And by the way, if you didn't answer the question, I don't know, I'm not looking at the chat, but that lower knob that he was manipulating before is for stitch width. The knob that he's standing on top of now is stitch length on this machine. And that is some pretty cool balancing right there. That is some pretty cool balancing, Smoke. Yeah, it is. You do it. Victory sign, buddy. Victory. Hoo-ah! Yeah. Look at him go. Look at him go. I used to run with somebody that looks almost like him. All right, they're getting all Ranger now. Getting down and doing push-ups by the stitch-offs. I shared some of these pictures with Paula before I released them to the public, and she said, "Oh, that's so cool. That guy is reading it like it's a map, like he's laying out a mission." I said, "No, he's doing push-ups. It's what Rangers do. Diamond push-ups, close hand push-ups, one-arm push-ups. I think the other guy is going to do some one-arms pretty quick here, pretty quick. There he goes. Yeah. Come on, Ranger. One-arm push-ups. Yeah, come on, guys. Get into it. Get into it. And that is just showing my little military area in my workshop. I've got my Army sign. I've got my West Point hat. And all of my new friends are going to call that their home. That's where they're going to hang out. They're going to hang out in that area right over there. I don't know if you can see them or not. I think you can. Start up here. It's one of my buddies. The dog is on top of the outhouse. Don't even ask me to explain that, please. One of the other buddies over there, another buddy over there. There's the tab. Tabs, I should say. Yeah. And I think that's our last shot, if I remember correctly. I think it might be. You understand now, not just to have fun and to do silly things with my friends in the still shots and all that, like that right there, but also so that you can appreciate more the process that I take these machines through, the workshop difference, the magic of the workshop. That's why I take time to do this. Okay? All right, so with all that blah, 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 let's go back to Joyce's machine and do our final sew-offs, which are going to be on this protected full-grain leather. Protected full-grain leather. And this, again, is the leather I get from the local factory, company, whatever, that makes seats for luxury private jets like Learjets and that sort of thing. They make beautiful leather seats, and you know, anything that's going to be leather inside of those luxury private jets. And the scraps that they can't use, that they marked up, like this little mark right here that they put on it as they were cutting it to make something. Those little scraps I get, and I'm very, very thankful for them, because what they can't use, we can use in premieres like this for our sew-offs, which is totally awesome. Totally awesome. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to use some of that leather. right, let's see. And since this was built around, to some extent, my new friends that arrived at the workshop that share that title of Army Ranger Special Forces. See if we can find a fitting song to put on for them. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find something or not. And I did find something. Hold on a second. I almost got it. Almost got it. All right, I got it. So for our final sew-offs, we're going to do a variety of different stitches on this protected full grain leather. I'm going to open it up with a song that is near and dear to my heart, and anyone that's has worn that battle dress uniform in the United States Army. I don't know these lyrics all by heart, so I'm going to see if I can pull it up real quick. Hold on. Let me pause it real quick. Y'all bear with me for a second. I want to pull these lyrics up so we can actually know what the lyrics are, because I don't know what they are off the top of my head. Hold on. Army song. All I want is the lyrics. No, that's YouTube. I don't want YouTube. I just want the lyrics, because we're already playing it on YouTube. You silly, silly search engine, you. We'll find it. Hang on there. Just think happy thoughts for a second here. Just think happy thoughts. All right, now we got it. Yes! I found it. I found it, Mommy. I found it. Okay. Hold on. All right, now we got it. And if you know the lyrics, sing along with me. March along, sing our song with the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might. And the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's done. And the army goes rolling along. Then it's hi, hi, hey, the army's on its way. Count off your cadence loud and strong. And wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. Yes! What a great song. What a great song! I even heard Alex singing with me. How cool is that? I didn't know you knew the words, Alex. Yeah. All right. Battle Hymn of the Republic. And I'll turn the volume way down. I think I turned it down too far. I did. All right, perfect music to wrap up this premiere as we prepare to go through a single layer of protected full grain leather. Approximately 3 to 4 ounces of leather fortified with a special chemical process that fortifies it and protects it from staining and wear and tear and your wild grandkids and everything else. You know it. All right, let's set up a stitch to do. All right, here goes. Our first stitch on this material. Stop! Unbelievably beautiful. Oh my goodness gravy. Can you see that in the shot? Yeah, you can. All right, if you know the words to this song, you can sing it too. Yeah, you can. I don't know if you remember when I was coming back from my trip to South Bend, Indiana, I had this playing in the car and had a chance to sing along with it. How cool is that? All right, next song, next stitch. You know what I meant. Yeah, I think you did. All right, let's do a blind hem stitch next. Ended in the up position again. How sweet is that? How sweet is that? His truth is marching on. Come on, Bill, sing with me. I know you know this one. All right, there's our blind hem. Let's lay down another cool one. Keep on rocking this. Let's do our snaky one. Yeah, let's do our snaky one next. Up position again. Oh, total victory! Oh my goodness gravy. Look at that, baby. Look at that. Look at those. Unbelievable! All right, final stitch. All right, we're going to do this like a really tight zigzag. Super tight. Execute now. Absolutely amazing. Amazing! What a fabulous way to wrap up this premiere with this final stitch off series on this protected full grain leather. I don't even know what to say. It is so absolutely, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? do you beat that? How do you even try? I don't even know what to do with that. I mean, seriously. All right, the way we're going to end it is, let's just end it. Let's end it with the 1812 Overture. We just got to do it. I don't have any fireworks. Mr. Bean is offering to do with his flashlight, but you know, it's not the same. Let's check out these stitches. Let's check out these stitches and just be like, say what? Look at that top edge. If you think we just sewed garment leather or something ridiculous like that, we're talking 4 ounces of protected full grain leather, baby. Follow me across. Unbelievable! What? Drop down. Show me that next one. Oh my goodness gravy! Next one. Focus in there, camera. Come on. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What? Just spectacular. That's the only word. Spectacular. Absolute glory. The totality of the stitching. Lock stitch. Totality of the stitching! Glorious! Oh, let's set it up like this. One more time. Unbelievable! Yeah, it is. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the 1972-73 Sears Kenmore Model 1318. Unbelievable. Holy mackerel. I'm pinching myself right now because I can't even believe that it happened. But it did. Right here on this channel. Way to go, Mr. Bean. Keep it going, buddy. Keep it going.